So now that we've installed the Alteryx Designer, let me give you an overview of the user interface. The most prominent area here is the white space in the middle. This is the workflow canvas. This is the main part of the Alteryx interface, where you'll build and modify your workflows using a visual drag-and-drop interface. The workflow canvas is where you can connect tools together to create a workflow, define input and output data, and configure the tool settings. You can have multiple workflows. You can add another workflow by clicking on this plus icon above the canvas. So currently, I'm on New Workflow 2. You can save your workflows as well by clicking on File and Save As. The extension for an Alteryx workflow is YXMD. This stands for Alteryx Metadata. Above the canvas, you'll find the tool palette. This contains a wide range of tools and functions that you can use to perform various data preparation, blending, and analysis tasks. You can search for specific tools, browse tool categories, or access recently accessed tools from the tool palette. So for example, I can use this search bar to search for the data cleansing tool. So I can type data cleansing, and the tool appears here. You also get resources to help you, along with links to the community. It's actually a very good source of help. So when you're trying to learn a new tool, you should definitely use the search bar. And notice next to the tool, it says example. If you click on it, an example workflow opens up with instructions on how to use the tool. Each tool has its own unique identifier, which will be useful when debugging for errors. So notice this input tool has got 123 in brackets. That's the identifier. And this data cleansing tool has got 126. That's its identifier. This one has 127. This one has 128. So each identifier is unique for that workflow. You also have these connecting lines between the tools. This indicates the flow of data between the tools. So data is starting from this text input tool and moving to this data cleansing tool, and this one, and this one, and this one as well. The tool palette is grouped by categories, as you can see. You have favorites here. This is where your favorited tools are added. If you right-click on any tool, you can remove from favorites, or you can add it to favorites. So this tool, for example, is in favorites, as you can see, by the little star, whereas this one isn't. So if I right-click, I can add it to favorites. There are standard recommended tools as well. So these two tools have been recommended. These recommendations are based on your most commonly used tools. You then have tools grouped by what they do. So input and output tools appear here. Tools used to prepare your data appear here. Tools to transform your data appear here, and so on. So it's organized very efficiently. You can use as many tools as you want. So let me drag in a couple of tools onto this workflow. So I can drag in this tool, and I can drag in this tool as well. Okay. So on the left here, we have the configuration pane. This pane allows you to modify tool settings, change input and output fields, and configure other options related to the selected tool. Right now, I've just clicked into the canvas, so the configuration is specifically for the workflow. If I select a tool, the configuration changes, and it's now specific to that tool. And if I select this tool, the configuration has changed again. Finally, at the bottom of the interface, you have the workflow results pane. This displays the results of your workflow execution. This pane provides information on how the workflow performed, any errors that occurred, and various statistics on the input and output data. Okay, so now I have a demonstration workflow on the screen. Don't worry about how it works. I'm just showing you the basics about the Alteryx interface when running your workflows. So notice the tools have this little green chevron. So you've got one chevron here, and you've got two chevrons in this tool, on the right and the left of it. The input data tools usually have just one chevron to the right of it, and you can click on the chevron to populate data in the results pane. So let me run this simple workflow. And don't worry about the tools themselves, I'll explain what it's doing in later lectures. So right now you can't see anything in the results pane because we need to run the workflow to populate the results. To run the workflow, click here. So the workflow is now running and it's successfully executed. So now as you can see, we've got results in the results pane. So now when I click on this chevron, you can see the data at this point. And when I click on this chevron, you can see the data at this point. And when I click on this chevron, the data slightly changes because this tool has made some transformations. So that is what these chevrons are. They populate the results and show you what the data looks like at a specific point of the workflow. So now let me explain what's going on with this workflow. This first tool is the input data tool. You can actually refresh this and get a preview of what the data look like when I import it from my desktop. So when I click on this chevron, you can see the results here, and this is what it looks like just as it imports the data. It then flows into this next tool because there's a connection between the two tools, as you can see by this line. If I add another tool, so for example this filter tool, and I drop it close enough, you get another connection too. So now data flows from here to here and here to here as well. So now let me delete this tool by right-clicking and clicking delete. You can also create a connection by linking the chevrons. So we have an existing connection here which I'll delete by right-clicking on the line and then clicking delete connection. So now if I want to re-establish this connection, I can click on this chevron, hold, and then drag it into this tool. And now we have recreated the connection. So now as I've said, most of the tools will have two chevrons. The one to the left shows the data as it goes into the tool, as you can see here. And what this tool is doing is it's sorting by the patient ID. So right now you can see the patient ID is not sorted in ascending order. So now when I click on the right of the tool, you can see that it is sorted by ascending patient ID order. So as I've said, this is the data before it goes into the tool, and this is the data as it leaves the tool. The chevrons and the results pane are a good way to examine your data, to make sure that the tools are working as expected. You also get useful warnings and messages as well. So if I just click into the canvas, you get errors, conversion errors, and warnings populated here from your last workflow execution. So let me intentionally generate errors. I'll just drop this formula tool into the workflow and I won't link it to anything. This will generate an error because this has no data going into it. As you can see, missing incoming connection. So if I run this workflow, you can see we've got one error here and it links back to this formula tool. And you can see the ID of 14. And when I click on this tool, the ID is 14. So as you can see, this results pane is good for debugging your workflow. Okay, so that was an introduction to the Alteryx Designer interface. Don't worry too much about the workflows that I've shown you. I don't expect you to understand what's happening just yet. This lecture is intended to introduce you to and help you navigate around the interface and get familiar with it. There'll be plenty of hands-on sessions coming up throughout the course for you to become experienced with the tools and workflows.